What is all this radioactivity, radiation good for? Okay, why do we care? Well, there are some uses for radioactivity, some pretty common uses. Some are sort of starting to fade away. But one of them is there's a story way back when of Oizi the Iceman. And there was basically this old corpse found in the Alps between Switzerland and Italy. And some hikers came across his frozen body, and they used a method called carbon dating, which is looking for radioactive carbon in the body. And using this carbon dating method, he was figured out to be 5,300 years old, which is the oldest preserved human ever found, almost 6,000 years old. And actually, because thanks to the glacier, he was the best preserved. So, of course, we all want to see a picture of what he looked like. So here's when they found Oizi the Iceman. You can kind of see here that he was just sort of maybe crawling on the glacier and then collapsed and fell down in the snow, and the glacier covered him. And 6,000 years later, because of global warming or whatever, the glacier started to melt and out he came. Okay, so then they took him out of the glacier and they took him back to the lab, and you can see again all his skin is intact. He kind of looks like an alien. Pretty nasty. But that's one of the uses for radioactivity, is carbon dating things. I want you to think about why certain things cannot be carbon dated. Like, why could the Mona Lisa painting not be carbon dated? We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. We also have another use for radioactivity, and that is for the production of electricity. And we can do that in a nuclear power plant. And what takes place inside a nuclear power plant is a nuclear reaction called fission. Okay, fission means to split. If there's a fissure, that's kind of like a split. And basically what's going on in fission is a heavy nucleus, remember our large unstable nucleus, splits in half or splits into two more stable nuclei. The smaller they are, the closer they are to that 1-to-1 or 1.5-to-1 neutron to proton ratio, and that's what makes them more stable. And in the process, we can absorb or release actually a ton of energy. And this occurs when nuclei are bombarded by particles and it starts a chain reaction. Remember, one thing leads to another. So along comes a neutron, which is rammed into a large unstable nucleus. And that splits into three things, okay? And I always ask this question on every test. What are the three products of fission? They are two new nuclei, okay? Here's your two new nuclei. Three new neutrons. Here's your three neutrons. And a whole bunch of energy, heat energy, okay? And that's going to lead to then where you think those three neutrons are going to go. Well, they're going to start another fission reaction. Okay, which is then going to lead to more fission reactions. And so this is why it's a chain reaction, and so on and so on. Here's another picture of what it looks like. You can see with more symbolic form, you have your neutron here, which is bombarding uranium, which is what they use in the power plant usually, which is going to split your unstable nucleus into two more stable. These are much more stable because they're smaller. Krypton is not a nuclear radioactive element anymore. You got your three neutrons and your energy. Okay, so there's just another look at that. Here's another picture showing what a chain reaction could look like. Now this chain reaction is just going to keep going and going, growing and growing, but we need a way to control it inside the power plant, which we'll talk about. But it also could stop on its own if we don't maintain critical mass. Okay? And what critical mass is basically, do we have enough neutrons coming into contact with the nuclei to keep the reaction going? And you can see here in this diagram that if you don't have enough neutrons, if they've escaped, then you're going to have subcritical mass. That means that enough neutrons have escaped so that the chain reaction is going to stop. We also have supercritical mass, which is where you have too many neutrons. Okay, but mainly what I'm concerned with is that you know that critical mass is the point at which the chain reaction is going to stop if you don't have enough neutrons to maintain it. So where do we find this fission? We've talked about it a little bit inside a nuclear power plant, okay? And most power plants work in the same way. They need a heat source that produces steam. The steam turns a turbine, which produces the electricity. So what varies among power plants is where this heat source comes from. Okay. The nearest nuclear power plant to San Diego, it's not in operation anymore, but when I started teaching, it was still in operation. Can you think about it? It's on the freeway. Okay, there's like 2 domes. It's an ocean near Oceanside, San Clemente. It's called San Onofre. Okay, that is no longer a working nuclear power plant. They're in the process of dismantling that, which is going to take years and years and years. But that, if anything, any kind of nuclear accident ever happens there, you're going to have to clear out like a 300-mile radius around that, and that would definitely include Valley Center. So, I'm sure you're getting tired. Here's another little break for you. Take a look at these and figure out what common phrase they represent. So let's talk about how the nuclear power plant works. All right, here's a diagram, and you can draw this, but I'll also give you a copy of it, so it's up to you whether or not you want to do that. But basically, over here in the reactor, okay, here's your reactor, that's where that nuclear reaction is taking place and producing lots and lots of heat energy. That heat energy creates the steam, which turns the turbine over here, which produces the electricity for us to use. And then everything gets recycled. Okay, everything gets turned back around, it's cooled back down, and it goes around and around. Now, what's taking place inside the reactor is a quote-unquote slowed down nuclear chain reaction. Remember, we have the neutron bombarding the nucleus, which splits it into 2 smaller nuclei, a ton of energy, and 3 new neutrons. Okay? Control rods are what maintain that control, and they're made of cadmium, and they absorb those neutrons so that it doesn't get out of control. If you had too many neutrons, then you're going to have that supercritical mass, and we're going to have an out-of-control chain reaction. Too much heat is being produced, and that's called meltdown, which you've probably heard of that. It's going to melt, basically, the nuclear reactor. So those uranium rods, which are called the fuel rods, that's where the reaction is taking place. They are made of uranium, as we saw in our chain reaction earlier. And the water is recycled, and once those new elements are formed, they're still radioactive, so that's radioactive waste, which is radioactive for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So herein lies the problem. This is why nuclear power we may have a little debate about nuclear power. Where does the waste go? It is a problem. So it's highly radioactive. Temporarily, it's stored in pools underwater because that kind of contains a lot of the radiation and the neutrons inside the power plants. But there's no permanent place to put it. Okay, nobody wants it. Years ago, they tried to store it in Arizona inside the desert in Yucca Mountain. But guess what? The Arizonians were like, keep that stuff out of here. We don't want your nuclear waste. So nobody wants this nuclear waste, which is deadly for hundreds and hundreds of years. I always get a student will say to me, well, why don't we just shoot it into outer space or bury it at the bottom of the ocean? Well, you don't want to put it at the bottom of the ocean because that's going to pollute that entire area, right? You can't shoot it into outer space because how much does it cost to go to the moon, or how much does it cost to shoot off a rocket? Tons of money. The whole idea is that you want cheap energy, and so it's not going to be inexpensive if you're shooting the waste into outer space. And of course, another big problem is that these power plants are not always the safest thing. They can explode. Way back in 1986, in Russia, Chernobyl exploded. And you can see here in this picture, that it exploded. The picture over here on the right is the aftermath. Okay, this is what they built to cover the reactor to try and keep everything in. It was called the sarcophagus. So they were running a test. The power plant exploded and it blew a ton of radioactive material into the air. And basically they had the Russian army come in to clean this up. They could only be in the zone for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and then they would have their whole lifetime worth of nuclear radiation, and they would have to leave, and they'd have to bring in some more of the cleanup crew. And this was a 24-hour-a-day thing, just bringing more and more people in. And of course, lots of those people died from radiation poisoning, cancer later on in their life. So that was one back in 1986, and they built that sarcophagus that goes over the power plant. Well, guess what? Now that's crumbling. That was 30 years ago. So now that's crumbling, and now they've started building another sarcophagus over the original sarcophagus. So when is this going to end? Well, it's not, because this stuff is radioactive for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. More recently, you probably remember this one, Fukushima, Japan in 2010. There was an earthquake and then a resulting tsunami. Well, the tsunami knocked out the power plant and basically overran it. And instead of, believe it or not, the power plant had no power to keep the pump running, to keep the reactor cool. So then, of course, the reactor exploded, and off you go. You got another nuclear disaster. And we'll talk some more about these in class. About these disasters and what can be done about them, and some more details.
At the control room simulator at Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant in Buchanan, New York, operators prepare for the worst.
They're trained on very extreme scenarios so that in the unlikely event they do occur, they know how to respond.
Deep in the plant, beyond several layers of security, is the containment dome. Inside
the containment dome at the bottom is the reactor that holds the fuel, that undergoes the fission process, that heats the water to make steam. That steam turns the turbines to make electricity.
In the massive turbine room, 2,000 megawatts of power is generated. After about 6 years of use, the uranium fuel is transferred to spent fuel pools. The pools are built into bedrock with walls made of steel reinforced concrete. All of the spent fuel that's been used at Unit 3 since 1976 in that spent fuel pool, which is under about 25 feet of water. It not only helps keep the fuel cool, but also provides protection from harmful radiation.
This pool is actually at capacity. So in the next year, we plan on taking out the oldest fuel and transferring it to dry cask storage. We can actually store that used fuel outdoors.
In a concrete bunker, 3 backup diesel generators are ready to provide power to the plant in case of a blackout, earthquake, flood, or attack.
We only need 1 to keep the fuel cool, but we have 3 in redundancy. At another location on site, there's a 4th one. And in addition to that, there's a portable steam generator that was added after 9/11.
In the wake of Japan's Fukushima disaster, change is anticipated.
Once we understand how they responded, how the plant responded, we'll change the way we do business in the U.S. I can't tell you what that looks like right now, but I'm quite sure we'll look at other redundancies and backup systems that we put in place.
At Indian Point, they have already made plans to order an additional portable backup generator and to keep sandbags on site in case of massive flooding.
Finally, our last use for radioactivity or radiation or nuclear radiation is fusion. So that's the opposite of fission. Fission is the splitting of the nucleus. Fusion is when you bring together 4 hydrogen nuclei at high temperature, and you get a helium nucleus and 2 beta particles and tons and tons and tons of energy, way more than fission. In fact, fusion is what powers the sun. Okay, that's how much energy we're talking about here. Fusion powers the sun. It is also a chain reaction, and we have used it here on Earth. It's not used in a power plant because it's too much energy. We can't keep it under control, but fission was what, and fusion was what were used in the atomic bomb or the hydrogen bomb. Fission provides the heat and pressure to trigger fusion, to start fusion of hydrogen nuclei. And there you go, you have your atomic bomb, your hydrogen bomb, as was dropped on Japan in World War II. And that's pretty much it. So we will talk more about the nuclear power plant and nuclear uses in class.